Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary spotlight on Britain. Britain is a 4-star defender. Britain is a monarch who joined the Federation to protect his people. He wears a mask to hide his scarred face, but deep down we know he's a handsome man who's just a little bit too shy. Very cute, Britain. Britain's companion is Iselin. She was saved by Britain when she bit off more than she could chew by fighting a monster that she wasn't able to defeat. It was this monster in fact that gave Britain his scar. Ever since, she's been at his tutelage, hoping to repay him for saving her life. I'll briefly go over Britain's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on him. I won't be going over the details of his skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on the stats and skill values. Britain's first skill is Piercing Spear. Britain deals defense ignoring additional damage to the enemy after normal attack based on his attack value. After he attacks, he gets one turn of stats weakening debuff that reduces his own attack. This means that Britain's main target will take the full damage of Piercing Spear, and the subsequent enemies will take less damage because of his stats weakening. So if Britain hits 4 units at once, the first unit takes the full damage. The second takes damage with Britain being affected by 1 stack of the stats weakening. The third takes damage with Britain being affected by 2 stacks of the stats weakening, and the final takes damage with Britain being affected by 3 stacks of the stats weakening. Simple, right? Britain's second skill is Cooling. After normal attack, Britain applies a special attack interference on his enemies. This attack interference works like a freeze where the enemy can't properly operate when it's their turn. Like many advanced freezes in this game, Cooling comes with a reduction to enemy stats. What makes Cooling unique, however, is that when the enemy receives damage of any kind, Cooling will be removed on the enemy and the triggering damage source receives a significant damage amplification. At plus 11 and above, we're looking at a 500% damage amplification. One thing to note about Cooling is that any damage source will cash out Cooling. This means that if you apply a DOT on a character beforehand, the DOT will immediately cash out on the 500% damage amplification and undo the attack interference. This makes it so that Britain may have anti-synergy with characters that apply DOTs or shock, unless you can get those things to kill the enemy with the damage amplification. Similarly, Cooling could be undone by any damage source. Asmode and Baba Reba can cash out on Cooling despite actually not attacking, but if the enemy survives somehow, then the freeze is undone. Britain's third skill is Permanent Armor Power. Before battle, Britain gains a permanent stat enhancement buff that boosts his attack based on his defense value. At plus 6 and above, Britain also boosts his crit rate based on his defense. Britain's awakening skill is Permanent Attack Interference Immunity. Britain is immune to all attack interferences, which includes his own Cooling skill. At plus 9, he gains incoming damage reduction on this skill. Britain is a defender with strong offensive potential who is capable of breaking high defense units with his Piercing Spear. Even with the limiter imposed on his Piercing Spear skill, where it deals less damage for every unit hit, Britain still hits very hard due to his bonus stats gained from Permanent Armor Power and the general damage scaling of his Piercing Spear. What makes Britain even stronger as an offensive threat is his 4-range tile. Varian is a warrior who's very good for the 4-range tile alone, and if the opponent stacks a lot of units in the same lane, Britain can decimate and cripple that form. Units who survive Britain's attacks are not out of the ballpark as they have to deal with Britain's special freeze. This freeze can set up enemies so that his allies can finish them off. Britain's freeze also carries a huge damage amplification along with major stat drops to make it easier for any of his allies to finish a unit off. Britain also carries decent defensive traits for a 4-star unit. He has permanent attack interference immunity with incoming damage reduction, and his skills will scale with defense, meaning that the tankier he gets, the more damage that he deals. Transitioning to his Rune and Soldier builds, you want defense on Britain. Permanent Armor Power makes it so that Britain gets more attack and crit rate when he builds defense, which is crucial for him. His amulet should also be double defense as well. I'll go over what Britain counters. Britain is a fantastic unit against Iris due to his general damage output and his natural immunity to charm. Britain's defense ignoring damage also makes him a strong candidate against any unit that can bolster their defense in battle. Britain simply does not care about defense. This makes him strong against Maxwell, Exile, Ian, Mora, Renee, Britain himself, and the 3 Musketeers with the exception of Rissa, who can mitigate a lot of his damage if he grazes her. It should also come as no surprise that Britain is just naturally strong against general squishy warrior units like Karen, Varian, and Deka. His attack interference can also threaten anyone who is not immune to it. Britain is also a viable option to either kill or threaten many 5-star units. He can kill some high defense units by sheer damage alone, but even the ones that are tankier like Jin, Valtor, and Orfina, he can easily set him up to be killed by another unit thanks to his Cooling ability. I'll go over some Britain counters now. Saris is the most impactful unit to protect yourself from Britain. Britain's main weakness in this kit is that all of his damage can be lowered by incoming damage reduction, and Saris can increase all of our allies' incoming damage reduction to 99.9%. What also makes Saris so strong against Britain is that she provides attack interference immunity. Isla and Brissa with Martina's attack interference immunity co-op synergy can also tank Britain, as both units rely on graze mechanics to mitigate damage and can also be immune to his freeze. Britain is also relatively easy to kill with units that can either utilize DOTs or Stigma in their damage. Karen, Ian, and Xenon are 3 examples. Alchi is also good against Britain since he's a defender unit. Scarlet is another solid character against Britain due to her being able to apply a strong stats weakening onto him and reduce his tile range to 1. It's very within the realm of possibility that she could just kill him if she's buffed enough. Lastly, any heavily buffed unit that could deal good damage could take out Britain even though his defense and incoming damage reduction is nice. Yunring and Varian are 2 examples. So some synergies with Britain. Britain mostly synergizes with any composition and isn't a very restricted character, but he does appreciate buffs from Ceres or Hephaestus like any other character would. It's important to consider potential anti-synergies with Britain, however. I mentioned earlier that DOTs can potentially ruin the effects of his freeze, so be wary of putting him with DOTs or shock characters in his lane. Isla, Ian, and Xenon in particular can cause him troubles. A really cool synergy is Britain with Babariba, where you can use his freeze to greatly lower an enemy's defense and increase their damage amplification, and Babariba will just outright nuke them. This is mostly a Guild War strategy, but it's pretty cool when done right. Okay, so for my opinion, before the companion system, Britain was considered one of the better 4-star units in the game. Britain did very good damage at that time, and his freeze and tiles were very useful. Of course, he eventually became irrelevant as most unupdated characters have, but of course, now we're in the present and he's been updated. Britain gains a new attack tile range, a defense ignoring additional damage with some limitations, and an enhanced freeze along with permanent attack interference immunity. These are all welcomed additions to a character that was arguably still aging quite well. Britain is very strong in Novice Arena, and his niche as an offensive defender is very powerful in Novice Arena metagames where warriors are traditionally pretty strong. I mentioned this before in my Vermont spotlight, but when a certain class of units grow too strong, people will begin targeting their spells onto them. Vulcan in particular is annoying to deal with, but Britain is unique in that he's a defender with a warrior killing potential. That alone makes Britain pretty useful if you intend to compete in Novice Arena. Britain's damage amplification on his cooling seems really strong on paper as well, but it only improves the damage of one damage source, and that tends to be the normal attack for most characters. This makes it not as strong as it seems for content like World Boss or Guild Raid. Cooling in practicality is kind of a gimmick, but when a freeze works and stalls an enemy once, and when it secures a kill from another one of your units, then it's done its job. So the question begs, should you invest in Britain? My answer is yes if you play Novice Arena or is just simply a new player looking for a good defender that can kill things. Britain is a 4-star, which are never quite hard to build in this game. Britain is very good and can even be useful in Guild War as its utility is relevant in that content. Being able to soften up units like Jin while doing defense ignoring damage that can kill other units is very strong. Britain's skill progression is also very steady and he works at most skill levels. He's a 4-star and a good one at that, so shoot for plus 15 eventually to get his 200% attack damage scaling on his piercing spear. If you don't intend to use him or play Novice Arena, then you could just skip out on him. Overall, Britain went from surprisingly good for an unupdated unit to a good unit that's finally been updated. Britain was seldom bad in this lifetime and his future looks good for Novice Arena. Britain, the actual country on the other hand, well, I'm not sure how they're doing since Brexit. Thanks for watching my Britain Mercenary Spotlight. Stay tuned for more.